A woman with no claim, no covenant, and no business approaching the Messiah of Israel walked up to Jesus and refused to leave until he healed her daughter. She was the wrong race, the wrong religion, and the wrong gender for the moment she was demanding. And when Jesus tested her with words that sound, on first hearing, almost like a rebuke, she stood her ground and argued back. By the time she walked home, her daughter was free, and Jesus had called her faith great. The question is, what she saw that the disciples missed. You've probably read the story and felt something uncomfortable in it. Maybe you've wondered why Jesus seemed to brush her off. Maybe you've wondered if you could ever pray with the kind of nerve she had. So here's what's actually happening in Matthew chapter 15, verses 21 through 28, and why it might be the most important picture of persistent faith in the whole gospel. Jesus had crossed into the region of Tyre and Sidon, pagan territory, a place a faithful rabbi was supposed to avoid. And out of those streets came a woman the text calls a Canaanite, which is loaded language. The Canaanites were the ancient enemies of Israel, generations of conflict packed into a single word. Yet here she comes, crying out, "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on me." That title alone is staggering. A Gentile woman in Gentile soil calling Jesus by his Messianic name. She knew exactly who he was, and he said nothing. Picture the silence. You've poured out the deepest cry of your life, and heaven has its arms folded. The disciples were unimpressed. They asked Jesus to send her away because she kept shouting after them. Then Jesus answered, and his answer landed harder than his silence. "I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." She wasn't on the guest list. The mission on paper excluded her. So what does she do with that? She kneels. The Greek word is the same one used for worship. She drops in front of him and says 3 words that cut through every excuse in the book. "Lord, help me." No theological argument, no reminder of her rights. She knew she had none. She just put her need at his feet and stayed there. Then comes the line that has unsettled readers for 2,000 years. Jesus said, "It is not right to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs." Read that and feel the weight of it. To Jewish ears, dogs was the casual slur for Gentiles. He's saying out loud what the religious establishment whispered behind closed doors. And here's where she does something most of us would never have the courage to do. She agrees with him. And then she out-argues him. "Yes, Lord," she says, "yet even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table." Stop and hear that. She takes the very word that should have shut her down, and she turns it into the doorway. "If I'm a dog, then I belong under your table. And if I belong under your table, the crumbs are mine by the kindness of the master." She climbed inside the metaphor and made it carry her. That's revelation in real time. You've been there, the prayer that won't move, the diagnosis that won't change, the marriage running on fumes, the child whose name you've worn out in front of God. And somewhere along the way, you started wondering if heaven had categorized you outside the promise, whether you were the right kind of believer for the right kind of breakthrough. The Canaanite woman walked into the same wall, and she found the crack in it. Because here's what she understood, that the disciples who'd walked with Jesus for years still couldn't see. The bread of God overflows. The table of the Messiah is so abundant that even the crumbs are enough to raise the dead. She was declaring her trust in the size of his mercy. One crumb from this master is more than a feast from any other. And Jesus said, "Woman, great is your faith. Let it be done for you as you desire." Mark's version, in chapter 7 verses 24 through 30, tells us she went home and found her daughter lying on the bed, the demon gone. Healed at a distance. Healed because a mother kept asking after the silence said stop. Look at what Jesus called great. Her faith, the grit of a woman who took every reason to leave and turned each one into a reason to stay. That's the faith Jesus put a crown on. So why did he delay? Why the silence, the seeming dismissal, the hard word about dogs and bread? Because he was drawing something out of her that needed witnesses. The disciples were watching. They were the ones who needed to see a Gentile woman model the kingdom faith they had been slow to grasp. Jesus was letting her show them what trust under pressure actually looks like. And he's doing the same with you. When the answer feels delayed, the silence is formation. It's the slow work of pulling a deeper faith out of you than the easy yes would have ever required. You think you're being ignored. You're being shaped. The crumbs you're crying out for are already on their way, and the prayer itself is making you into someone who can carry the answer when it arrives. Here's where most of us miss her example, though. We confuse her boldness with attitude. We think persistent faith means stomping into the throne room with demands. Read the text again. She knelt, she called him Lord 4 separate times. She accepted the painful word he spoke and trusted him through it. Her argument was rooted in worship. Her nerve was rooted in reverence. The two were never separate. That's the part the modern self-help version of Christianity will never teach you. Real faith bows low and stays low, and trusts that the one on the throne is good, even when his words sound hard. Persistence without humility is just noise. Humility without persistence is just resignation. She held both, and the gates of heaven swung open. You want a faith like hers? Then start with what she started with. A clear, honest cry about a real need. No spiritual performance. No fancy vocabulary. Lord, have mercy on me. If you can pray that one sentence with your whole chest, you are already further along than most of the religious experts in that crowd. James chapter 1 verses 6 through 8 tells us to ask in faith, with no doubting, because the doubter is unstable in all his ways. She doubled down, then do what she did when the silence stretched out. Kneel, worship, stay close. The temptation in long prayer is to drift away from God in search of someone who might give you a faster answer. The Canaanite woman ran the opposite direction. The harder it got, the closer she moved. Hebrews chapter 11 verse 6 reminds you that God rewards those who earnestly seek Him. Earnestly. That word implies friction. It implies a season where the seeking costs something. And then, when the moment comes, learn to argue like she argued. Take the hard word and trust the heart behind it. When Scripture says God is your Father, take Him at His word, as a father. When Scripture says nothing is impossible with God, in Luke chapter 1 verse 37, hold that line even when impossible is exactly what your situation looks like. Argue from the character of God. That's what she did. She heard the word dogs and answered, "Then I belong to your house." The deeper miracle wasn't the healing of her daughter. The deeper miracle was that a woman the religious system had written off ended up speaking truer theology than the men in the inner circle. She understood the abundance of Christ before the disciples did. She understood the reach of His mercy before Peter did. She understood that grace overflows the borders of Israel before Paul ever wrote a word about it. She was a Gentile preacher in one sentence. The Gospel of Matthew, written for a Jewish Christian audience, kept her story in the canon precisely because she was a sign of what was coming. You may be reading this and feeling like an outsider to your own faith, like you came late, or you came broken, or you came with a past that disqualifies you from the table the long-time believers seem to enjoy. Hear her voice in your ear. Even the dogs eat the crumbs. The table of Christ is a wide table. The bread of His mercy is given by grace, never by resume. If you are willing to come low and stay close, there is more than enough for you and the people you love, your daughter, your son, your marriage, your mind. The thing you've been crying about in private for so long you've stopped expecting an answer. Bring it to the same Lord she brought hers to. Don't tidy it up. Don't make it presentable. Just put it at His feet. And when the silence comes, because it sometimes does, keep your knees on the floor. The delay is formation. The hard word will yield to a kinder one. The master of this table has heard you, and he is shaping a faith in you that will outlast the trial that produced it. One more thing. Notice the closing line in Matthew chapter 15 verse 28. Let it be done for you, as you desire. Jesus healed her daughter and handed the initiative back to her. As you desire. He honored her hunger by giving her the very thing she had been reaching for. That is the God you are praying to. A God who, the moment your faith holds steady, hands you the whole loaf and tells you to eat. Consider what that means for the prayer you almost gave up on this week. The one you stopped praying out loud because you were tired of hearing your own voice say it. She prayed hers in a foreign town, in a hostile language, with a crowd of strangers telling her to be quiet. And she walked home with the answer in her hands. Your circumstances are not steeper than hers were. Your God is not smaller than hers was. So the next time you feel disqualified, remember the Canaanite. The next time the answer feels delayed, remember the silence she outlasted. The next time the door looks closed, kneel at the crack and trust the Master inside. The table is set, the crumbs are already enough, and the one who called her faith great is still calling out the same faith in you.